I want to give a case study of Ron. Ron in the chapter, past president of NSA, awesome, awesome guy. This is a perfect case study because Ron and I worked together over the last year. We met at Video Lab in 2018, and we sat down at lunch, and he said, look, here's where I'm at. I've had a great career, but I had a real bad back injury. I need to redo it. I had a partner. We had a specific brand. That's gone away, and I'm going to redo everything. Every one of your distinctions, it never comes from me. I've never had an original idea ever with a client. It always comes directly from the client, right? So we started asking. So on one side of Ron's distinction, here's his background. So he has a sales background. He's worked with companies in many ways, helping them redo their sales teams. So what is your background? What is the thing you've spent your career doing, right? Second thing, he has this story about his mother, and it's so powerful that his mother at a cocktail party one time had someone tell her, that's just not going to be possible for you. You know, that's just not something women do. His mother was an entrepreneur. His mother showed him this mindset of relentlessness when it comes to certain things and was a great entrepreneur. That level of mindset was a huge point of what we did with the work, all right? So there's certain stories, certain things that you do that have just shaped you. It's like you have this fundamental foundational memory of growing up, or who your father was, or who your mother was, or maybe what they weren't and what you're going to be. Those are important. And then the next part is he has this track record for helping CEOs reshape sales. So those are just some of the blueprints, but like those were things that came up on our conversation, right? So on the other side, it's like, okay, who's your ideal clients? These are specifically them. They're companies with revenue of 15 to 200 million. So it's like this specific, not just companies or organizations, it's like with this much revenue. That's who's a good fit. YPOs, and if you're having a national sales meeting of any kind, you're my right fit. Other than that, nothing. Other people could call, but these are who we're targeting. What is their core problem? All of them. We have to increase revenue. We have to. We need to increase revenue, and then this is the next part. We have to actually do more with less time, right? And we all know this, but ever since 2009, the average job print increased 30% and it never went back down, right? So everybody is doing way more with way less time now than ever before. Right? So when we put all these together, one of the things that Ron has is this idea of momentum, how to create momentum. He actually has like a formula for how to create momentum. The thing about momentum, right, this is what momentum helps solve this, but momentum is something that it's kind of like something in development. You're building momentum. That's kind of when I take the cue card out where I file things in my brain, momentum is like a lot of times building momentum, right? Or I have momentum. How do you create momentum? Right? And momentum is made up, we kind of went to the dictionary, but one of the things that Ron talks about a lot is actually called velocity. And so we came up with something called the velocity mindset. Now the mindset part came from his mother's story. And velocity was this idea of momentum to deal with how do you do more with less time, right? And so when we created Ron's video from the start, we didn't think about a single thing about how we were going to edit his speaking clips until we had distinction. This is the problem, is that most people in their speaking business, sorry I didn't have this, this process in place when we worked together. It's been in development. We have to have this specificity at the core of what we do before we ever start a video. Most speaking videos are just like, here's a section of me speaking, here's a section of me speaking, and also, by the way, look at all the things I've done. Right? Nobody cares. They don't. But they do care about what you can do for them. And so once you have distinction, let's watch the first 30 seconds of Ron's video, and let's make sure that the volume isn't going to blast everybody.
Picture this. You've just bought a very expensive machine for your factory. You put 10 units through it a week. But now what if you put 100 units through the machine? Your profitability goes up, right? But we only have the same amount of time, 24 hours in a day. So the question is, how can we put more through our machine, us? Think about this. If you can find out the specific issues, what motivates that customer to buy, can you see how that's going to be more powerful? Can you also see how that's going to be faster? So the only way you're going to do more and sell more is if you gain velocity.
Cool. So a few things with that. One, all in New York, because Ron lives in New York. What is he saying? He said, look, say there's a machine and you had to get 200 times the amount. So he's talking about what we talked about in our upfront messaging. You have to do more with less time. He came up with that story as a part of what was coming up. He's already been talking about it, but he refined that story in order to tell this part of it, right? And then the way that everything is filmed, I shot everything at 120 frames per second, which just means that I could speed things up really fast or I could slow them really down. And the idea is like this idea of you've got to speed up, but in order to speed up, you actually have to slow down. You have to ask these better things. And the idea of velocity, in 27 seconds of a video, you have total clarity about what this person does and specifically how he can do it for you. Now I'm going to go into exactly, I'm going to break apart the whole video for you, and I don't want you to be like, well, how am I going to do that? What I want you to take away from this is just that the old way of doing speaker videos is gone. It's dead. And that is, here's my best stuff. Take a look. It is, here are my specific ways that I can help solve your problems. And that's why the Speaker Palooza that we're doing tomorrow is so important, is because everyone that was a part of the webinar up front learned that I was saying choose 3 things that are specific to the biggest struggles that you have. So that on the phone you can say, on the phone you brought up this, here's a section for my keynote where I talk about exactly that, right? So it's tools, it's the same thing around creating distinction. Let's just look at this thing again, right? When it came to doing more with less time, we had that in there. When it came to mindset from his mother's story, again, we had in there, velocity mindset was in the first 30 seconds. Most meeting planners say, I get 200 emails a day. I have caterers who I'm getting calls from. I have all these people who I have to report to internally. I have people who want to speak for me. I have so much going on. Usually, Chris, I give a video 30 seconds. If I like what I see, I keep watching. If I don't, I turn it off. Right? And I see so many people waste the first 7 to 9 seconds of their video with like a logo. Right? It's like 9 seconds. Right? It's just, whoa. Or those first 9 seconds are all about the speaker with the voiceover. Blah, 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 blah. Like, again, you have to show distinction in whatever you do. And I'm going to, again, break things down for you. But come up with your distinction first. And I want to just point out one thing about testimonials. This testimonial here, a must-have keynote for any sales organization. When you've got lots of written testimonials, I'm sure, and if not, there are certain people that you can go back to and ask for, right? What do I ask for? Well, put testimonials in line with your story, okay? So the reason we put this here is we wanted to say it's for sales, that's it, right? That's why the only reason we wanted to have this testimonial here is we wanted to let people know in the first 30 seconds, she is perfect or he is perfect for blank, right? So that's why we use this testimonial here, is that we wanted to let them know this is a sales topic. Cool? We go into it and now we've got this distinction, and now what happens after this? Ron can now begin we've just defined the character, it's sales teams. Now he can tell us about the problem. So let's have Ron tell us about the problem.
Companies, in my opinion, have it wrong when it comes to growing sales. If they want to grow 10 million, first thing is let's get 5 extra salespeople in here. That's probably the worst thing you can do. All right, you have to find a way to have better conversations, more powerful conversations, and you can reduce that sales cycle.
Cool, so in like 17 seconds, Ron told us most organizations think this way. That's wrong. I'm telling you, and we'll tell the story at the very end of this, that I'm confident that that specific line was what was so appealing to a contract that led to a lot of tens of thousands of dollars for him after someone saw this video. Because most organizations are trying to grow their sales team to hit their revenue goals. And if you can say, this is what you're doing right now, I'm telling you that's not going to work, there's another way, and I have it, oh my gosh. And some of you guys know it. Jill and I were doing work in the morning. In her interview, she said this thing. In the afternoon, we met this real estate guy. And in a conversation that we were filming, he said the exact things that she was saying that morning not to do. And you know that there's certain things that you've learned along the way that your people or your audience is doing wrong. Like, that's the character who has the problem. You got to name the problem. Cool? And now, what do? We've named the problem so we can move to the credibility, or why Ron is a perfect guide for that, and you do that by your proof, what you've done.
So as CEOs, how do we create the energy in our companies? How do we build a high-performing sales culture? What we have to do is we have to create the right mindset. So what I bring into my keynotes is some kind of transference of skill. And I prove to the audience that just by changing the conversation, by asking one different question, they immediately reposition themselves in the minds of the customer and they become more valuable.
So I'm going to go back to that, but a couple things there. What did the guy do? The guy has had a background in this. He's helped a lot of companies do it. And then what did we immediately hear? He said a question. So as CEOs, how do we create this new vision? And then he said, here's what we need to do. So he started working right into the plan. Here's the steps to do it, right? And then he was describing the way his keynotes help do that. There's people on stage, there's interactions, he's gonna say these specific things, they're gonna have shorter conversations, and their sales are gonna increase as a result. So again, if I had said any of those things earlier in the video, that wouldn't work. And James, who is the editor on our team who created this, he just did such a masterful job about hitting that point right. And so now we have this guide who's told us these great things. We have proof, and I'm going to let it carry on. But now, here's the other part, and I just want to say is now we can tell a little bit more of an emotional story. But we've got the 90 seconds done, and someone could stop the video right now, and they could be sure that he could go on the short list, right? But now we've got the 90 seconds, so now we can change the pace and go down.
So they looked at me and they said, how are we going to do it? And I said, I have no clue. Now you may be looking at me like, why would I do that? Well, I didn't have a clue because we didn't get into it yet. I don't have the answers up front. And if you have the answers up front when you go into a customer interview, you are not having the right sales conversation. Because the answers should be born out of collaboration as to what is important to them and what you could do for them.
The audience that we had were totally engaged and attentive to this approach, and I think it'll make a dramatic impact on our sales going forward.
He was incredible. Liked him so much that I ended up hiring him for my business, turned it into something that's more customer-centric and focused.
Don't worry about hitting home runs. Worry about helping your customers hit their home runs. Move from a self-focused mindset to a customer-focused mindset. Because when you help your customers hit their home runs, they're going to be succeeding. And when they're succeeding because of you, they're going to be looking at you and they're going to be saying, that's the person I want. I would never be here without you, and I can't get rid of you.
The last part is simply that we want them to move them to action. Your video should not wrap up cleanly and perfectly. Everything should compel them to say, here's the things you need to be doing. If you're not doing them, you got to book this person. Right? So this last part is just what are the action steps to change and what is compelling us to take action.
It was so powerful that the sales cycle was reduced from 5 calls to 3. How much more could you produce in a year if you reduce your sales cycle from 5 calls to 3? But the point that I want you to understand is that it all starts and ends with us. Your success starts and ends with you. We can no longer act as salespeople, we must act as leaders.
So again, here we have this audience, and this will give you the formula for knowing which parts of my talks talk about me as a guide, which parts are planned or prescriptive, which parts do I identify the problems, right? Which ones do I say specifically the audience and you can actually use this formula where it's on your sheet right now, and you can start outlining the descriptions that you use based on where you're supposed to put them in the video.